Uh, Stop what you're doing right now, because what I'm picking up in your energy today is not something I can deliver casually, not something I can wrap in soft language and gentle reassurance. What I'm seeing is raw, it's real, and it demands that I speak directly. There is a woman in your life or in your recent past who made a deliberate choice, a calculated, premeditated, conscious choice to move against you. And I need you to understand something before we go any further. She is not okay right now. Whatever she thought was going to happen when she set her plan in motion, whatever outcome she was banking on, whatever version of this story she rehearsed in her head, where she came out ahead and you came out diminished, that version is not playing out. Not even close. The story is going in a completely different direction than she anticipated. And today, I'm going to walk you through exactly what she did, exactly what's unraveling for her, and exactly what that means for you. But first, I need you to breathe, because some of you have been carrying the weight of this situation for a long time. Some of you have been confused, hurt, questioning your own perception of reality, wondering if you were too sensitive or too reactive or too dramatic about what you felt was happening beneath the surface of this person's behavior. You were not too sensitive. You were not too reactive. You were not dramatic. Your instincts were accurate from the very beginning, and everything you sensed about this woman's intentions was correct. The validation you have been waiting for is coming, and some of it is already here if you know where to look. Let me be very clear about something before anything else. What this woman did was not impulsive. It was not a moment of weakness or a thoughtless reaction or an accidental collision between two people going in different directions. It was intentional. She studied the situation. She identified what mattered to you. She found the pressure points, the relationships, the opportunities, the reputation, the sense of stability you had worked to build. And she applied pressure to exactly the right spots at exactly the right moments because she planned it that way. This was not random. This was not heat of the moment. This was strategy. And strategies require time and energy and focus, which tells you something important about how she viewed you. People do not invest that level of deliberate effort into people they consider irrelevant. You were not a casual target. You were a specific one. She looked at your life and felt something she could not manage inside herself, whether it was envy or fear or the quiet discomfort of someone who knows they are standing next to something they cannot match. And instead of sitting with that discomfort honestly, instead of examining what it was really telling her about herself, she externalized it. She turned it into a campaign. And you became the subject of that campaign without ever having asked for the role. That is not your shame to carry. That is hers. And right now, she is beginning to carry it in ways she did not anticipate. Here is where her plan started to fracture, because every plan built on a distorted foundation has a structural weakness that eventually reveals itself. No matter how carefully constructed, no matter how confidently executed, the weakness is always there, waiting, and hers is surfacing now. She did not account for your resilience. She assessed you at a specific moment during a specific chapter of your life, and she made assumptions about your capacity based on what she observed in that narrow window. She thought she knew your limits. She thought she understood exactly how much pressure it would take to keep you down, to redirect the narrative, to position herself favorably while you struggled to regain your footing. She miscalculated. because what she observed was a version of you that existed under circumstances she helped to create. She never saw what you become when the fog clears. She never saw you operating from a place of steadiness and clarity. She saw you disrupted, and she mistook disruption for weakness. She saw you questioning yourself, and she mistook self-reflection for self-doubt. She saw you staying quiet, and she mistook restraint for defeat. Every single one of those reads was wrong. And the version of you that exists right now, the one that has processed what happened, that has moved through the confusion and the hurt and arrived somewhere more grounded than before, that version of you is someone she has never actually encountered. And she is about to. Now I want to talk about what is happening on her end, because this is the part I feel most strongly and most specifically. The story she constructed, the version of events she carefully shaped and circulated to protect herself and reframe her behavior, is losing its structural integrity. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in the way that a crack spreads through concrete, quietly, steadily, unstoppably. There are people in her circle who accepted her version of things because it was presented with confidence, and because confidence is often mistaken for credibility. But confidence cannot compensate indefinitely for inconsistency, and her story has inconsistencies, details that shift slightly depending on who she is speaking to, timelines that do not quite align with other timelines, small contradictions that on their own mean nothing, but when accumulated begin to paint a very different picture than the one she intended. The people around her are starting to notice, not because anyone pointed it out to them, because the fractures are becoming too numerous and too visible to ignore. And when the people who once gave her the benefit of the doubt begin to quietly revise their understanding of what actually happened, the ground she built her position on starts to shift beneath her feet. She can feel it, even if she cannot name it, even if she will not admit it to herself. She can feel the stability she thought she had beginning to loosen. There is something she said, a specific narrative she constructed and distributed that served her purposes beautifully in the short term. It explained her behavior, it justified her choices, it painted the situation in a light that made her look reasonable, even righteous. And for a while it worked, because she is someone who knows how to make a story sound convincing. She knows how to deliver a version of events with just enough emotional detail to make it feel authentic. But here is the thing about fabricated narratives. They require maintenance. They require constant energy to sustain, constant adjustment to keep plausible, constant vigilance to prevent the individual pieces from contradicting each other. And that maintenance is exhausting. It is exhausting in a way that the truth never is, because the truth maintains itself. It requires nothing from you. It simply exists and waits and holds its shape, no matter how long it has to wait. What she built requires her constant attention, and she is getting tired. And when people who are managing a fabrication get tired, they make mistakes, statements that contradict earlier statements, behaviors that seem slightly erratic to the people watching, attempts to reinforce a version of events that have the opposite effect because the effort behind them is suddenly visible in a way it was not before. An invisible effort to maintain a narrative is one of the clearest signals that the narrative is not natural, and her effort is no longer invisible. I also need to tell you about something she thought was buried. There is a specific action she took or a specific communication she made that she was confident would never surface. She took precautions. She covered her tracks. She made sure that the evidence of what she actually did, the real mechanics behind her plotting, would not be easily accessible to the people whose opinion of her depended on not knowing. She was confident in this. She should not have been, because information buried in unstable ground does not stay buried. It shifts. It works its way toward the surface, the way pressure always finds a release point eventually. It has not fully surfaced yet, but the people standing closest to the situation can feel the ground moving beneath them. They can sense that something is not quite settled, something is not quite finished. And when this piece of information finally breaks through, and it will not just confirm what many people have been quietly suspecting, it will confirm what you have known in your bones since the very beginning. That what was done to you was not an accident, it was not a misunderstanding, it was not two people simply seeing a situation differently. It was deliberate, it was targeted, and it was more extensive than she has ever been willing to acknowledge. Now, I want to shift the focus entirely to you because while all of this has been unfolding around her, something equally significant has been happening in your life. And the two processes are not separate, they are mirror images of the same corrective movement. As her position weakens, yours strengthens. As her narrative loses coherence, your truth gains visibility. As the ground beneath her strategy becomes unstable, the ground beneath your feet becomes more solid than it has been in a very long time. This is not coincidence. This is balance reasserting itself after someone tried to disrupt it at your expense. And the restoration that is happening in your life right now is real, and it is specific, and it is directly connected to the collapse of what she built against you. Let me get specific about what this restoration looks like, because you deserve specificity. You deserve more than vague reassurances that things are getting better. Relationships that were strained by her influence, connections that cooled or became distant or went quiet in the wake of whatever narrative she circulated, are beginning to repair themselves. People who stepped back from you, whether because they believed what they were told or because they simply wanted to avoid the turbulence she created around your name, are starting to move toward you again. Not always with grand gestures, not always with formal acknowledgement of the distance they created, but with presence, with renewed warmth, with a quality of attention that communicates without words that something in their understanding of the situation has shifted. These returnings are quiet, but they are real, and each one represents a small but meaningful correction in the landscape around you. A landscape that she tried to rearrange in her favor and that is now rearranging itself back. There is also something happening in the more practical dimensions of your life. An opportunity that was blocked, a door that was closed, a resource or a path forward that was obstructed either directly by her actions or indirectly by the consequences of what she set in motion, is beginning to reopen. The obstruction is losing its solidity. The blockage that has been sitting in your path is dissolving, not because you forced it, not because you found a workaround, but because the energy that sustained it is no longer being fed. And when blockages stop being fed, they collapse. What was taken from you is being returned Maybe not in the exact form it existed before, maybe in something closer to what you actually need right now, rather than what you needed then. But the return is happening. And the timing of it is not random. It is directly connected to everything else that is unfolding. I want to talk about what you did during this entire ordeal because I think it matters more than you realize. I know there were moments when you wanted to react, when the injustice of the situation burned so hot inside you that the only thing that kept you from confronting it publicly was some deep, stubborn instinct that told you to wait, to hold, to trust something you could not fully see yet. I know there were nights when staying quiet felt like losing, when your restraint felt indistinguishable from surrender, when you looked at what she was doing and everything in you screamed that someone needed to say something, that the truth needed a louder advocate than silence. But you waited, and that waiting was not passivity. It was not weakness dressed up as patience. It was the single most powerful thing you could have done in that situation. Because if you had reacted in the heat of the moment, if you had descended into the arena she was operating in and fought her on her terms, you would have handed her exactly what she needed. A version of you that looked reactive, emotional, unstable. A version that would have made her narrative easier to believe rather than harder. By staying in your integrity, by refusing to become what she needed you to become in order for her plan to work, you denied her the ammunition she was counting on. Your restraint was strategy. Even if it never felt that way, even if it felt like nothing more than exhausted endurance, it was the reason that what is now happening to her is happening so cleanly, so completely, so without any interference from you that could complicate the outcome. Your hands are clean, and clean hands matter enormously in a situation like this. There is a person, someone who was either aligned with her or who simply accepted her version of events without question, who is in the process of changing their position right now. This person has seen something or heard something or quietly connected pieces of information that were previously separated in their mind. And their understanding of the situation is undergoing a revision, a significant one. This shift matters beyond just the individual, because when a key person in a shared social environment changes their perspective, it gives everyone else who held quiet doubts a reference point, a permission structure to voice what they sensed but did not feel safe enough to say. And what follows that kind of permission is a cascade, not dramatic, not sudden, but steady and cumulative. Person by person, the architecture of what she built is being disassembled, not by you, not by anyone acting on your behalf, by the simple, relentless pressure of reality asserting itself against a structure that was never built to last. Let me tell you about her internal state right now, because while the external consequences have been accumulating, something has been happening inside her that she has not shown anyone. She is afraid, not the kind of fear that produces honest self-reflection, not the fear that leads someone to examine their choices and take accountability. The other kind, the desperate, cornered kind. The fear of someone who can feel the walls of a situation closing in and is running out of moves. She has begun to sense that the narrative she worked so hard to construct is no longer holding the shape she gave it, that the people she relied on to reinforce her version of events are developing doubts she cannot address without creating new problems. And that fear is causing her to make errors she would not have made when she felt secure. over-explaining things that did not require explanation, volunteering information that draws attention to exactly the areas she needs people to stop looking at, reacting disproportionately to small things because her nervous system is carrying the weight of the larger thing she cannot acknowledge out loud. These errors are visible to the people around her. Even if they cannot yet name what they are seeing, they can feel that something is off, that the version of her they thought they knew is showing inconsistencies they did not notice before. And that feeling, once it takes root in the people closest to her, does not leave. It only grows. Here is what I want you to understand about the nature of what is happening. This is not revenge. I want to be absolutely clear about that. What is unfolding around this woman is not the product of any dark energy or any wish or any intention you sent in her direction. You did not cause this. What is happening to her is the natural, mechanical, almost mathematical consequence of the choices she made. It is cause and effect operating at a level that no one can manipulate or accelerate or slow down. What you are witnessing is accountability, and accountability, when it arrives through natural consequence rather than through someone's deliberate action, is thorough in a way that deliberate retaliation never is. Because retaliation can be contested, it can be defended against, it can be reframed as an attack by someone who knows how to play the victim. But natural consequence cannot be reframed. It cannot be argued with. It simply arrives and settles and does its work without giving anyone a target to deflect toward. She cannot point at you and say you did this to her, because you did not. And that absence of a target, that complete lack of an external enemy she can redirect attention toward, is one of the most disorienting parts of what she is experiencing right now. I also want to say something about the quality of what is being rebuilt in your life, because it is not simply a return to the way things were before she acted against you. It is better than that. The relationships that survive a test like this, the ones that waver and then return with deeper understanding, carry a solidity that untested relationships simply do not possess. You now know who showed up. You now know who held. You now know, with a clarity that comfortable times never could have given you, which connections in your life are real and which ones were conditional. That knowledge is permanent, and it is valuable in a way that is difficult to quantify but impossible to overstate. Even your own sense of yourself has been upgraded by what you have been through. You know what you can endure now. You know what your integrity looks like when it is under pressure. You know that you can stand in the middle of someone's deliberate campaign against you and remain standing without sacrificing who you are, without becoming what they needed you to become, without letting what was done to you define what you do next. That is not a small thing. That is everything. And it ensures that no one, not her, not anyone who comes after her, will ever be able to move you from the ground you are standing on now, because you have already proven to yourself that the ground holds. The final thing I want to leave you with is this: you did not deserve what she did. You did not provoke it. You did not earn it through any failure or any shortcoming of your own. It was done to you by someone who looked at your life and experienced it as a threat rather than an inspiration. And that response, that impulse to move against someone simply because their existence makes you feel something uncomfortable about yourself, that says everything about her and nothing about you. The consequences arriving in her life right now are not cruel. They are simply honest. They are the honest reflection of choices that were made with full awareness and full intention. And your restoration, the rebuilding of what she tried to dismantle, the reopening of what she tried to close, the return of the people and the opportunities and the sense of stability she targeted, that is equally honest. It is the honest reflection of who you are, of how you handled something that would have broken a lot of people, of the integrity you maintained when maintaining it cost you something. The accounting is being settled on both sides simultaneously. And when it is complete, when the last piece has fallen into its final position, what will remain on your side of that accounting is more than you had before she ever decided to make you a target. More clarity, more strength, more depth, more of the right people, more of the right opportunities, and an unshakable knowledge that what is yours cannot be taken from you. Not by her, not by anyone. It finds its way back. It always does.